Good morning. My name is Boaz. I run the customer success team at a company called Talek, which is a point-of-sale solution for small businesses. When I say small businesses, the vast majority of our customers are single location merchants, like a coffee place or a fast food delivery, restaurants, retailers, services. 87% of my customers have less than 10 employees. They transact less than $250,000 a year. They pay me less than $1,000 a year. It's a very, an extreme case of low touch, high volume. We had just about 7,000 customers when I joined about a year and a half ago. We have just about 15,000 today. We'll finish this year close to 30 and inch toward 100,000 next year. So what I'm going to share with you over the next few minutes is my learnings from the past 15 years, almost 20 years of experience in SaaS company. Talek is my 9th startup, so I've been moving around quite a bit, building a lot of teams, thinking a lot about organizational structure and best practices for customer success. And I came up with some realizations that I thought would be valuable to share. So I'm assuming that if you join this session, you work in customer success. Congratulations. It's quite a happy place. It's quite a happening place. There's a lot going on. It's a little bit of a maze, but it's the right place to be. So you are making good moves in your career, moving into this dimension. But the question is, are you successful? You're doing a job. It's probably interesting. It might be stressful. But the real question is, are you successful, right? This image here is from one of my all-time beloved scenes in movies. Alice in Wonderland wanders around the forest and get to an intersection. She doesn't know where to go. Thankfully, the Cheshire Cat pops up and she asks him, where should I go? To which he answers, where do you want to go? And she gets very upset. She's like, I don't know. I just want to get out of the woods and find my way. And he goes, well, if you don't know where you're going, it doesn't matter which side you should take, which kind of happens a lot for people. If you don't have the right goals and you don't know where you're going, you might have the wrong activities, right? You might go down a wrong path. And that wrong path might be just different from others, or might be actually quite devastating if you think about the impact that you might have on your company, on the world, on employees, on team members, on customers, etc. So I think if you really want to have the right organizational structure, the right job, the right process, you really need to start with what are you trying to achieve, right? And I'd like to present to you kind of a perspective, may not be shared by everybody, but more and more people out there get that understanding, which is for every company out there, at the end of the day, the success of a company in a marketplace is measured by the extent of value that the customers of that company are able to extract from their solutions. If you think about it short term, you can put other metrics, other proxies for that value. You can measure how many customers you have, how many people you employ, how much revenue you get, how much net retention you generate, right? Profit, revenue, earnings per share, the value of the company in the market, right? Just the share price. All of these are really proxies because at the end of the day, it is about how much value your customers get from your solutions. And the higher that value, the more you have a chance to be successful as a company. That leads directly into the objectives for customer success as part of this big machine called the company, right? When you think about a company, it has different teams: marketing, product, engineering, sales, customer success, finance. The outputs of every team are the inputs of the other. So each of them has a slightly different set of objectives. When it comes to customer success, I hold very firmly that the number one, by far, objective you should have is maximize the value our customers extract from our solutions. Now, we are not, most of us, I guess, are not working for just the sake of being nice So we do want to get value out of those engagements with customers. Of course, this is the secondary set of goals to maximize the monetary and non-monetary value that we get from those customers. This, if you think about the comments from before on different teams and how they work, that set of objectives is kind of the reverse, or the yin and yang, if you may, from sales. Salespeople obviously focus on maximizing monetary value we get from customers. After all, we pay them a commission, a percent of that sales. But even salespeople, when you think about it, don't try to take all of the value that we create together, because then the ROI for the customer is going to be very low and the customer is not going to buy. So even salespeople try to optimize here between value to us and value to the customer, but clearly their objective, and we want it to be their objective, is to maximize value to us. Once that customer signs on the dotted line, which basically means they have bought the salesperson's story and they were willing to give us a chance, from the moment they sign on the dotted line, the table turns, and our focus in customer success needs to be focused on maximizing value to them. If you agree with that, then the question that should come to mind for you is, okay, how do you measure that value to the customer, Boaz? And I'd like to suggest this framework, kind of simplistic. Think about the volume of this cube as the value that the customer gets from us, right? 3 dimensions. The first one is the program scope. What is the customer doing with us? The more they do with us, the more value we can create. If they only use 2 or 3 of our solutions instead of 15, then obviously we can provide less value than if they use all of our solutions, right? If they purchase the premium package as opposed to the standard package, or the platinum versus the gold, we can provide more value. So if you think about the line item on the order form, the more items there, the more value we can create. The second dimension is the program execution. I think about it as the how. How well do we provide them those solutions they acquired from us? Take it to the extreme. The customer bought everything we have to offer and paid. Well, the day after, we may have gotten the money, but the volume of the cube is 0 because we haven't yet implemented the solution. The faster we can implement, the more value we create. The easier the solution that we have deployed is for the customer to use, the more value we can create. So the execution of the onboarding is really important. Take it to the next level. The customer is now live. If we are able to address, respond to their issues in 30 seconds instead of 2 hours, we would create more value. If we can resolve a larger portion of the tickets, the problems coming from customers on the first call in fewer minutes, we would create more value. So there's a how element there, right? How well we operate, deploy, and ongoingly operate the solution. The third dimension is where, in my experience, the difference relies between good and great companies, vendors, right? And this is, why is the customer using our solution? Are we addressing what their real needs are? And the trick here is, I would like to suggest that the customer, by and large, does not want to use our solution. Yeah, they bought it, but they bought it for a certain purpose, and the purpose is not that solution, it's the value from that solution. Let me give you an example, right? On my phone, I have a fantastic application from my bank to deposit checks. It adds a lot of value to me because before that application, I had to walk to the bank, stand in line, talk to someone. It took a lot of time and hassle to deposit the check. Now with this application, a few clicks, maybe a minute or less than that, I can get my check deposit. I like that application. It saves value, saves money to me and adds value to me, but I don't want to use it. What I want is the money in the bank. If I can automate this process even further, if I can get the check deposited in the bank automatically, that would be even better for me. So if you think about the why, like what is the use case the customer is interested? Is it to help them increase revenue? Is it to reduce cost? Is this to help their employees feel better? These are different perspectives, different use cases, different objectives, and we have to align to that, and what we do needs to align to that. For example, if you fail to acknowledge what we just talked about, and you want the customer to use more of your product because you think this is what they really need, you may end up with a very convoluted product that requires a lot of clicks, which on the graph would look great. Hey, look at how many clicks the customer is using us a lot. And the customer is looking at that and like, why are you wasting my time? This is not an easy to use system. I want it all automated. Think about it. So let me talk to you about how those different things get together and why this is the kind of, we're getting towards what's like org structure for customer success. You probably all heard the term land and expand. It's a very practical go-to-market strategy that focuses on where we start and how we grow over time. Think about it in the following way. On the x-axis, on the y-axis, we have the what do we have to sell, the solutions we're selling in the marketplace to customers. And on the x-axis, you have who do we sell to, the personas, right? The different people within the customer that we sell to. If we sold everything we have to every person of the customer, this will be the LTV, the long-term value we can get from their customers, right? Customers can contract us for a lot of solutions for a lot of their people. The reality is that at any given time, only some of the users have access to some of the solutions. This is our current contract. And then that contract also has either explicit written or implicit acknowledged definition of what phase one deployment is going to be, because we never deploy every feature and train every customer on every capability, right? What we would like is that for that initial deployment to be successful, so we can then expand the footprint of what the customer used to the full expense of the contract, and from that point even further to other solutions they haven't yet bought from us. So this is where cross-sell and upsells come to bear. Now, if you think about who's doing what, you can start to see how an org structure is being built, right? The success of the initial deployment is the primary responsibility of a professional services, a deployment organization. Program expansion beyond that initial phase is the primary responsibility of a customer success management organization, while maintaining availability, stability, performance of whatever the customer is using already is what technical support is all about. And traditionally, sales is all about the upsells and cross-sells, right? The essence of selling more to the customers. Although it depends on how you work and your operating model, you might find that program expansion, which is what CSMs are doing, can maybe collapse with some of upsells and cross-sells activities and become one item, one work stream, which is what some customers are interested. So there's some overlap here in how to work. That leads me to that realization of how things work and who does what, leads me to this slide, which is my suggestion for you. I found it very, very effective in my world. The last 3 companies that I've worked with have been operating in this way. The right organizational structure for customer success. It starts with a team that is responsible for deploying our solutions to customers. I call it professional services. If you want to call it onboarding or deployment, feel free. The naming doesn't make a big difference. What is making a big difference is acknowledging that onboarding customers is a project, right? It has a start, a scope, and an end date. If there isn't an end date, lots of bad stuff happen. You can't track, you can put a raise, you can raise a flag of success. You can move responsibility to other people. So you need a specific team focused on onboarding customers, and you measure them based on the success of the project, which is on time, on budget, on quality. This is what successful projects are. Once the customer is live, the responsibility for maintaining the technical relations between us and them is the fundamental responsibility of technical support or customer care, or again, whatever the name that you want to give that team. But it's a team that is making sure that our customers can operate whatever it is that they have at the highest level of availability, stability, and performance, and they work on cases. So unlike professional services that manages projects, technical support is a time-based team that operates ongoing, mostly responsive to customer cases. I have a problem, can you fix it? I have a challenge, can you help me? Parallel to technical support is a customer success management organization that is responsible for maintaining the business relations between us and our customers. And you can see how technical support is about technical relations, CSM is about business relations. And the focus of CSM has to be program expansion. I can't tell you how many companies out there I find the CSM being responsible for support issues. Glorified, right? They are called customer success managers. But if their job is to be the escalation over support, then essentially they're a support escalation team and not a customer success management team. I like to create a divide between the two. If there are problems with support, and for whatever reason we're not doing a good job in support, in resolving the technical issues of customers, then we should fix support, not create a new team with a glorified name. What I do think that there is a value, if you remember the previous slide when we talked about the program expansion, we need a specific team focused on not solving problems with the current program, but rather figure out how to help customers do more and better with our solutions. Can we understand additional use cases? Can we look at additional people or additional solutions that can help you, Mr. Customers, separately from fixing problems you might have with your current operations? Next to these three operating teams, there are two other teams that provide help for these three to do their jobs better. One is knowledge and training. Knowledge and training is a function that is responsible for developing knowledge assets and the tools for their distribution. So think about videos, Q&A documents, presentations, training materials, templates, playbooks, knowledge assets and their mechanisms, a learning management system, a knowledge base, in-app guidance tools, community sites, etc. This function sometimes exists as a pillar on its own. I have seen it being part of support. I have seen it when companies want to pay for it. I've seen it part of professional services. Again, you can put it in different places as long as you acknowledge that the creation of knowledge assets is separate from interacting with customers in an ongoing basis, which is what professional services, technical support, and customer management people do. And then the last one is customer success operations. Think about it as a team that is focused on helping the other teams with tools and processes to improve how they work, right? I can have my VP of professional services take some people off the front line to develop a new process for better onboarding. But now I have taken people from the front line, and instead of servicing customers, they do an internal project. Rather than do that, which is disruptive to the team, it's better, and we see more and more companies do that, to develop a separate function, customer success operations, that is doing internal projects. They can do reporting, they can deploy new tools, enhance methodologies, they can overhaul processes, etc., etc. And these other teams are the internal customers of the customer success operations. So I find this framework to be extremely valuable, very extensible. If you think about it from this perspective, you can start small and grow to as level as you want without the need for a lot of reorgs, right? Obviously, there are more layers underneath, or you can collapse things if you want, but this is a very fundamental framework that's very useful. So you may want to ask yourself, like, okay, Boaz, looks great on a slide. Is this your recommendation? Should I, right now, right tomorrow, go to my boss, the CEO or whomever that is, and tell them that this is the org structure I want? And the answer obviously is not necessarily. This is the fundamental structure. Now you need to think about, does it fit your particular situation, right? Early stage companies may have one person in the entire CS team that does all of these things, right? If you're a very small company, you don't need so many functions, each very particular and specific in their needs. You may collapse things together. As you start to mature in your organizational structure, mature in your business, large in your size, you might evolve into the organizational structure to mature as well into this level. The other thing that you may want to keep in mind is your operating structure. If your customers are large enterprises and very few of them, you might have a slightly different organizational structure than if you have a very stretched organization for low-touch customers where you have very many of them with very light interaction with each of them. There's also obviously a difference between different companies with respect to their geographic coverage, right? It's very common when new offices are built overseas. You're a European company and you started an office in the US, or you are a US-based company that wants to start an office in Australia or China or somewhere in Asia. You start small and you may not have all of these different functions at the same time. So maybe your home base operation in Europe is already structured this way, very mature, but your office in Australia only have two people and they share some of these capabilities. They will mature and expand over time. And then the last thing, which probably makes the most impact over all of this, is company culture. Someone once told me that culture eats strategy every day, right? So if this is the right strategy, analytically on a piece of paper, this is the right approach, your company culture may change that dramatically, right? What do I mean? For example, if your CEO is very commercial in nature and they have a very strong head of sales that want more ownership over a larger portion of revenue generating activities, you might find some of CSM world happening in sales as opposed to in CS, right? If your company has a very strong DNA of engineering, you might find portions of technical support live in engineering and not in CS. If there's a very strong mindset of charging for everything, you might find training to be a separate P&L outside this team altogether, etc., etc. So you need to understand, where do you live, who are the other executives, what do they want, where is their strengths and weaknesses and development needs, and based on that, decide how you want to operate and evolve your org structure accordingly. So that's all I have to share. By the way, I'd love to hear your feedback, so feel free to connect to me on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever. You can find me easily on those platforms. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your feedback. If you're trying to implement some of those models and would like some perspective, feel free to reach out to me and ask questions. I'd love to hear your feedback if you're trying to do it in your companies and how it works. And I hope that this is useful. So let's move off the screen share and see if there are any questions that I can help with. Hey, Donna. One question, Boaz, under circumstances, does it make sense for the chief revenue officer to own CS versus chief customer officer? Who eats whom? Yes, this is one of the biggest questions in the customer success world. Almost every conference will have a session about who owns commercials. Jane, Nathan, and I wrote a pretty intensive blog about it about a year ago. You can find it on my LinkedIn if you want. Who owns commercials? There are two ways to think about the commercial side. One, I believe that the term chief revenue officer, which is a new term, right? It's a new title. It's a title that has been emerging recently by salespeople who saw some of their sphere of influence being taken away by CS teams, because a larger portion of revenue comes from existing customers, which started to be managed by CS people, and all of a sudden, salespeople saw some portion of their sphere of influence disappear. They wanted to take it over. They invented a new name, Chief Revenue Officer, and now the rationale is all revenue goes under one place. Value, it makes sense in some companies, not in others. I can tell you that in my experience, very rarely do customers benefit from having CS report to the chief revenue officer? It may make the life of the chief revenue officer easier and their title bigger. It might make the life of the CEO easier because one person owns the dollar metric for the company, but it's not necessarily what matters most for customers and what makes customers most excited. Someone once told me that for a surfer, everything looks like a wave. For a chief revenue officer, everything looks like a dollar amount, and you may cut yourself short with short-term decisions to get more revenue on the expense of long-term customer value, which is where, again, the yin and yang on goals that we talked about before, maximizing monetary value to us versus maximizing value to customers, come into play. Hopefully that answered the question. When you're a hammer, everything looks like a wave is another way of looking at it. Yes. All right, we have about a minute. So again, thank you very much for participating. Love to hear your feedback. Please connect to me on LinkedIn. Hopefully you find these sessions successful and insightful. And good luck in your jobs. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.